They thought the fire they unleashed would erase us. They thought humanity would die crying beneath their ships. But they didn't understand what kind of species they'd just tried to burn away. When you push humans past pain, you don't find victims. You find monsters. The sky over Nairobi turned silver before it burned. At first, people thought it was a strange dawn, some atmospheric trick, maybe a reflection from the orbital mirrors the corporations had hung in geosynchronous orbit. Then the silver thickened, rolling in like mercury clouds. Radio chatter went mad. The ground shook. And then the first beam cut through the horizon. It was not fire in the way humans understood it. It was erasure. Entire districts vanished under a line of pure light. Millions gone in the first 10 seconds. That was the beginning of the Vora purge. The Vora were not new to the galaxy. They were old predators, a civilization that had risen and fallen across 10 star systems. Their doctrine was simple: domination through extermination. They didn't conquer planets. They cleansed them. Any species showing potential to rise above cultural tier 2 was considered a threat to galactic stability. Humanity, with its fast tech development, hybrid war machines, and stubborn independence, had crossed that invisible line. So the Council of Races sanctioned it. The extermination of Earth. They called it a preventative measure. The fleet arrived on a quiet Thursday, in a year when humanity had thought itself safe under interstellar treaties. There was no declaration, no warning, no ultimatum, only silence, and then orbital bombardment. For the first 12 hours, Earth screamed. The Vora didn't waste time. Their beam arrays sliced through continents, their drones seeded radiation clouds, and their shock troops descended in shimmering pods to eliminate survivors. Cities turned into glowing scars. And yet, something unexpected happened. Human communications didn't collapse. In the chaos, 1,000 emergency frequencies came alive. Amateur radio networks, old satellites, underground bunkers, humanity's habit of redundancy kept information alive. While the Vora hunted, humans adapted. They hid, then fought, then organized. In a command bunker beneath Colorado, General Morgan Hale stared at the holomap. Red icons marked destroyed cities. Blue icons blinked. Human forces still alive. Casualty estimates? He asked, his voice sandpapered from lack of sleep. 70% of global population centers hit, said Commander Alina Joe. But we've got pockets resisting, mostly civilian militias, ex-Marines and whatever's left of NATO command. South America's gone dark, Africa's scattered, Asia's fragmented. Any contact with Luna Base? Negative, sir. The Vora fleet sterilized the surface. Hale exhaled slowly. Then this is it. Planetfall defense, Joe hesitated. Sir, what's the plan? We can't win a space war. No, Hale said. But we can make them bleed for every inch they take. He pointed to the map. They think we'll break. We'll show them what breaking looks like. Above the planet, the Vora High Admiral, Kreth Talvor, observed Earth from the flagship Imperium's maw. He was tall, armored in shimmering bone plate, with eyes like molten copper. Primitive species, he hissed. They still cling to combustion engines and projectile weapons. Their defiance is amusing. His adjutant, a thin Vora analyst, tilted his head. They've mobilized ground resistance faster than predicted. Local defense networks remain partially active. Let them, Kreth said. Resistance makes the harvest more entertaining. He turned toward the viewport. Begin Phase 2, ground cleansing. In the ruins of Berlin, survivors gathered in underground rail tunnels. The air was thick with dust and smoke. Among them was Dr. Elias Rourke, an astrophysicist turned reluctant tactician. He'd watched his university burn, his colleagues turned to ash, and something inside him had cracked, but not broken. He spoke into a salvaged radio set. This is Berlin Cell Theta 9. We have civilians, medical supplies, and captured Vora drones. If anyone hears this, we're still alive, Static answered. Then a voice broke through. Theta 9, this is Resistance Command, North America. Copy your signal. You're not alone, Doctor. Rourke froze. Command, Hale. Is that General Hale? Came the steady reply. We've been tracking survivors. You're part of the network now. Hold your position. Use the drones if you can. We're going to make them regret landing. Rourke felt something he hadn't since the sky burned. purpose. The first counterattack was not grand. It was human. In a shattered valley in Poland, a group of farmers armed with hunting rifles ambushed a Vora patrol. They used terrain, surprise, and desperation. The Vora, used to crushing armies, never expected traps set with old tractors, explosives, and sheer audacity. 3 Vora mechs fell before they even realized they were under attack. By the time the patrol was destroyed, only one human was left standing, a woman named Anya, bloodied and limping, her rifle empty. She radioed one sentence before passing out. "Tell them, they bleed." That message spread like wildfire across the remaining networks. "They bleed" became a rallying cry. Resistance units carved it onto walls, painted it on ruined vehicles, broadcast it in every language. Humanity had found its line in the sand. The Vora underestimated time. In space, wars were fought in seconds. But humans fought in persistence. They endured days, weeks, months, turning every moment into strategy. Hale's command reorganized survivors into cells. They scavenged alien tech, reverse-engineered drone parts, and turned old nuclear silos into makeshift launch bases. Meanwhile, in the Vora fleet, the first signs of unease began to ripple. Ground casualties mounted higher than expected. Ambushes in irradiated zones, stealth attacks on supply pods, electromagnetic interference sabotaging their drones. Kreth Talvor reviewed the reports with disgust. "You mean to tell me these primitives are adapting?" His adjutant stammered. "They have unconventional tactics, Admiral. They fight in small groups, unpredictable, using obsolete technology." "Technology should not matter when one side is superior," Kreth snapped. "Eradicate them," the adjutant bowed. "As you command." Weeks turned into months. Earth's atmosphere remained scorched, its orbit filled with debris. But the Vora advance slowed. They called it human interference. Hale called it resistance evolution. In a hidden lab beneath what had once been Geneva, Dr. Rourke worked alongside military engineers. They were developing something new, something stolen from Vora tech but powered by human creativity. "We can't match their ships," Rourke muttered. "But we can blind their sensors, hijack their drones, disrupt their energy cores." Alina Joe leaned over his shoulder. "How long before we can deploy?" "Depends on how fast you can get me a stable Vora power cell," she smirked. "Already on it." One night, Hale stood outside the bunker, looking up at the ruined sky. The auroras danced unnaturally, flickering from orbital fires. He thought of his wife and son, lost in the first wave, and clenched his fists. "They wanted monsters," he whispered to the dark. "We'll give them monsters." When the first Spectre unit went live, everything changed. It was a hybrid drone, part human ingenuity, part stolen alien design. Invisible to Vora sensors, it could infiltrate ships, sabotage systems, and transmit false data. Within days, Vora fleets began firing on their own patrols. Fooled by phantom readings, the aliens called it chaos anomalies. Humans called it revenge. Kreth Talvor raged across the command deck as reports flooded in. "How are they doing this?" "Explain!" "Unknown, Admiral," replied the analyst. "Our ships are turning on each other. Our data streams are corrupted." "Then purge the data." "Purge everything!" But it was too late. The ghosts were already inside their systems. By the 3rd month, human broadcasts began reaching off-world colonies. Other species, observers who had watched in silence, started to notice. The extermination wasn't going as planned. The humans were still fighting, and worse, they were winning small battles. In a private session of the Galactic Council, panic spread. A Vora delegate slammed his claws on the table. "This is impossible. The human species should have been vaporized." A neutral species envoy replied quietly, "Perhaps you should not have provoked them." "Provoked?" the Vora hissed. "They are vermin." "Vermin," the envoy said, "who just hacked your fleet command." The chamber fell silent as screens flickered with human transmissions. Images of survivors, of burned cities, of a planet refusing to die, and at the center of it, the message broadcast across the galaxy: "You wanted monsters. You'll get them." The Vora learned fear, not all at once, but in moments. It began when one of their troop transports vanished mid-descent, its signal cut off after entering Earth's atmosphere. They assumed mechanical failure. Then another disappeared. And another. By the fifth, Kreth Talvor demanded a full scan of the hemisphere. They found nothing, no wreckage, no radiation trace. It was as if the ships had been swallowed by the planet itself. They had. In the mountains of Kazakhstan, a network of deep mining shafts had become humanity's hunting ground. Old industrial tunnels, once built for rare earth extraction, had been converted into anti-air death traps. The missing transports had been lured in by false signals, created by hacked Vora drones, and guided straight into magnetic vortex fields. When the ships crashed, the survivors were captured. For the first time, humanity had living Vora prisoners. The cell was cold and dimly lit. Kreth's second officer, Commander Vorkath, knelt on the steel floor, shackled with human restraints forged from scavenged armor plating. His 4 eyes glared at the human who stood before him. "General Hale, you'll get nothing from me," Vorkath hissed. "Your species is finished." Hale regarded him calmly. "Maybe. But before we go, we're going to make sure you feel it." He motioned to a technician. The lights dimmed, revealing holographic projections, images of Earth before the invasion, forests, oceans, children laughing in city streets. Then the images shifted to the ruins, the dead, the burning skies. Vorkath watched in silence as Hale's voice dropped to a low growl. "You see this? That was our home. You erased it. So now we're erasing you." He turned to leave, but Vorkath spat. "You can't fight the infinite, human. The Vora are eternal." Hale paused at the door. "Then we'll see how eternal you are when the oxygen runs out." He sealed the chamber behind him. Far above Earth, the Imperium's maw loomed like a floating fortress. It had never lost a battle in 5 centuries of war. Inside, Kreth Talvor paced before his officers, his patience thinning with each report. "Ground losses are unacceptable," he barked. "Explain." One officer stepped forward. "Admiral, the humans use their planet as a weapon. They exploit radiation zones, manipulate weather patterns, and—" "Excuses," Kreth snarled. "A lesser species cannot outfight the Vora." Another officer spoke carefully. "Their resistance is not conventional warfare. It's persistence. They don't surrender even when defeat is certain." Kreth bared his teeth. "Then we break them faster." He turned to his war strategist. "Initiate Black Rain." Black Rain. It was a biological extermination, a mist of nanoplague designed to rewrite DNA into liquefied biomass. When released, it would sweep across continents, killing every organism in hours. It had been outlawed by the Galactic Council, but Kreth didn't care. His reputation, his pride, his species' dominance, everything depended on crushing humanity. The order was given. Dozens of pods launched from orbit, descending into the upper atmosphere. They burst open, spreading glittering clouds of death. But something went wrong. Instead of falling over populated zones, the clouds drifted into the jet stream and vanished. The Vora sensors couldn't detect them. Hours passed. No mass deaths, no spread patterns. Then the Vora fleet's own bioscanners began sounding alarms. "Admiral," a technician shouted, "the nanoclouds have been hijacked. They're moving toward our ships." "What?" Kreth roared. Before his eyes, holographic displays flickered with impossible readings. The clouds had reversed course, accelerating upward. Within minutes, they began eating through Vora hulls. It was human interference, hacked by Dr. Rourke's Geneva lab. Using captured Vora nanocores, he had reprogrammed the plague mid-flight. The death mist became a corrosive swarm, targeting Vora biosignatures. The Imperium's maw shuddered as alarms blared. "Seal the decks!" Kreth screamed. "Deploy countermeasures!" But the damage was done. Thousands of Vora soldiers perished in their own weapon. On the surface, Dr. Rourke leaned back from his terminal, trembling. The lights flickered as his exhausted team watched the satellite feed of Vora ships burning in the stratosphere. "They tried to poison us," he whispered. "So we fed it back to them." Commander Joe looked over his shoulder, stunned. "You just turned their genocide weapon into a defense system." Rourke's eyes were hollow. "No, I turned it into revenge. Weeks later, in the shattered remains of London, resistance fighters began retaking ground. They moved through bombed streets, guided by drones whispering coded messages. Their uniforms were mismatched, patches of old flags, scavenged armor, even police gear, but they fought like an army born from ashes. Among them was Anya, the woman from Poland who had first said, "They bleed." Now, she led an entire battalion known as the Bleeding Sun. Her voice crackled across radios worldwide. "We're not ghosts. We're the memory of what they tried to kill, and memory fights harder than fear." Her unit's emblem, a crimson sun dripping over a black horizon, became the symbol of the resistance. Creth Talvor, humiliated, demanded reinforcements from the Vora home system. But the response was cautious. The Council of Races had begun to waver. The extermination of Earth had become a public spectacle, a failure of control. Civilized worlds, long silent under Vora dominance, started questioning the doctrine. Some species even began smuggling supplies to human survivors. For the first time in eons, the Vora were losing their aura of invincibility. Creth swore to crush that illusion personally. In the ruins of New York, General Hale gathered his officers. The underground war room flickered with maps and enemy movements. "Our intercepts show the Vora are preparing a full-scale assault," Hale said. "They're calling it Operation Silence." Joe frowned. "They'll target every major resistance hub. That includes us." "Exactly," Hale said. "So we'll give them something worth finding." He zoomed in on a section of the Atlantic Ocean. A dormant undersea power facility, the Poseidon Array, had been offline for decades. It was a geothermal energy grid built during the pre-warp era, capable of channeling enormous heat output. Rourke explained the plan. "If we can reactivate it, the array can create a focused plasma surge through the magnetosphere, enough to fry anything in orbit." Joe's eyes widened. "You want to cook their fleet?" Hale nodded grimly. "They burned our world. Let's return the favor." The mission to Poseidon was suicide. A strike team of 30 went in, engineers, Marines, and Rourke himself. They traveled underwater using modified submersibles patched together from scavenged parts and alien wrecks. The ocean was black and silent, filled with drifting debris from orbital crashes. As they descended, Rourke stared out the viewport. "The ocean doesn't care who wins," he murmured. "It just waits." Joe replied quietly. "Then let's give it something to remember." When they reached the array's core, they found it half-collapsed, its geothermal vents glowing faintly. The old human machinery hummed weakly, still alive after all the years. They worked for hours, bypassing circuits, rerouting conduits. Above them, the Vora fleet began descending, unaware that death was rising from below. Creth Talvor watched from his command throne as his armada formed up. "This ends now," he declared. "No more hiding. No more games. Reduce the surface to ash." The fleet charged their weapons. Then suddenly every Vora screen flickered. Their navigation failed. Power drained from their reactors. In the distance, lightning arcs erupted through the upper atmosphere. Unnatural, blinding, alive. The Poseidon Array came online. From the depths of Earth's oceans, a surge of plasma burst upward, spiraling through the magnetosphere like a wrathful serpent. It hit the first Vora ships in seconds. Hulls melted, shields collapsed, power grids detonated. The entire fleet began falling out of orbit. Inside the control room, Rourke screamed over the roar of the system. "It's working! But it's overloading. We have to get out." "Too late!" Ju shouted. "The vents are going critical." Rourke turned to her, eyes filled with quiet resignation. "Then let's make it count." He stayed behind, holding the array's controls until the explosion consumed him. The surge amplified tenfold, ripping through the sky. From space, the sight was apocalyptic. A ribbon of white fire cutting through the heavens. Half the Vora fleet was obliterated in that single strike. When the smoke cleared, Hale received the final transmission from Poseidon. Rourke's voice, distorted but steady. "Tell them we're still human." Then silence. Hale lowered his head. "You'll be remembered, Doctor." Around the world, humanity saw the light in the sky. They called it Rourke's Dawn. It became a symbol of defiance. Even Creth Talvor, staring from his crippled flagship, felt something alien stir inside him. Fear. But humanity was not done. For every city that fell, 2 more resistance cells rose. For every bomb that dropped, humans scavenged its fragments and built something deadlier. Children learned to fight in the ruins. Engineers turned wreckage into weapons. And amid the ashes, a new phrase spread among the surviving soldiers: "We don't fight for Earth anymore. We fight because Earth fights through us." As the months passed, Hale's command united what was left of the human race under a single banner: the Terran Retribution Front. They established hidden bases across continents, linked through encrypted Vora tech. What began as scattered survival had evolved into organized vengeance. And for the first time, humanity prepared to take the war off-world. In orbit, the crippled Imperium's maw drifted among the wreckage. Creth's body bore burns, his armor cracked, but his rage burned brighter. The Vora thought humanity's defiance was madness. They were right, but they had never faced a madness with purpose. It began quietly, an unregistered beacon flickering at the edge of the solar system. A single transmission repeated in every galactic language: "This is Earth. We survived your purge. And now, we are coming." Across the galaxy, the message was intercepted, analyzed, dismissed as impossible. No species had ever recovered from a Vora cleansing. No one. Yet the signal kept repeating, growing stronger, bouncing from asteroid relays that shouldn't exist. In orbit above the ruined moon, fragments of old human stations came alive. Automated systems rebooted, powered by scavenged Vora cores. Drones reassembled derelict frames. Ships once thought lost began to stir. Humanity was rebuilding in the shadows. On Earth, in the underground command network beneath the Andes, General Hale stood before a massive display, the Earth Restoration Project, ERP, though the soldiers jokingly called it Endgame Resurrection Protocol. At the center of the plan were the Hades platforms, massive orbital guns built from wrecked Vora weaponry. Hale's engineers were constructing them from debris in low orbit, linked to a network of captured Vora reactors. Jo entered the room, her uniform scorched from a recent skirmish. "We've completed 3 platforms. Power stability's at 60%. Hale nodded. "That'll have to do. When we're ready, we'll take back orbit." Jo hesitated. "Sir, the Vora will retaliate harder than ever." "The Council's debating sending a secondary fleet." Hale's eyes hardened. "Good. Let them come." Meanwhile, Anya and her bleeding Sun Battalion were deep in Siberia, tracking down what the humans had begun to call the Ash Moons, Vora command spires that had burrowed into Earth's crust. They served as relay points, controlling ground forces and siphoning resources. Destroying them would cripple planetary occupation. Their approach was brutal. Human soldiers crawled through radiation zones, their armor lined with lead and prayer ribbons. They used EMP bombs, old railguns, and weapons so crude the Vora didn't even register them as threats, until they fired. When the first ash moon fell, it shook the ground for 1,000 kilometers. Anya stood amid the ruins, her face streaked with soot. The air was toxic, the ground glowing red. But her voice, broadcast through the resistance network, was calm. "They said we'd die like insects. We're proving them right, except the insects bite back." In orbit, Creth Talvor seethed. The Vora fleet had regrouped, reinforced by fresh warships from their homeworld. But morale was fractured. His sub-commanders questioned the campaign's purpose. One dared to speak. "Admiral, our doctrines are failing." "The humans—" "Silence," Creth growled. "They are an infestation. I will erase them. But they've adapted to every strike. They fight without pattern, without logic." Creth's claws scraped the console. "Then we destroy logic itself. Prepare the planetary purge engines." The purge engines were nightmares, massive orbitals designed to pull energy from the planet's core and turn it outward, cooking the surface from within. No species had ever survived their activation, but the Vora hadn't accounted for human interference inside their own systems. In a quiet data chamber aboard Imperium's maw, a single corrupted file spread unnoticed through the network. It wasn't a virus. It was a recording. Rourke's final words. His dying message from the Poseidon array had been embedded into the Vora codebase, replicated by their own self-correcting protocols. Every time they synced their systems, the words played faintly through internal channels. You wanted monsters. You'll get them. It was psychological warfare from beyond the grave. Some Vora crew began to panic. Their systems malfunctioned, displays flickered, AI cores reported auditory anomalies. Paranoia spread like wildfire. To the Vora, fear was weakness. But now fear lived inside their machines. Back on Earth, human engineers worked tirelessly on the next phase, the Prometheus drive. It was insane, brilliant and human, an attempt to retrofit an FTL core into a planetary engine. If it worked, Earth itself could launch a counterstrike across the stars. Dr. Lin Wei, Rourke's former protege, led the project in a hidden base under Antarctica. Her team scavenged from wrecked Vora ships, repurposing alien materials. When skeptics called it impossible, she simply smiled. So was surviving the first day, she said. We've made a habit of doing the impossible. The first test nearly tore the planet apart. The Antarctic sky erupted in blue-white lightning. Energy waves rippled through the crust. The poles shifted slightly, enough to register on every Vora scanner in orbit. The aliens thought it was a last-ditch detonation. They were wrong. Humanity was building a planetary engine, a weapon of scale the galaxy had never imagined. When the Council of Races saw the data, panic swept through their chambers. Delegates argued, shouted, and demanded explanations. The humans are constructing a weapon capable of altering planetary vectors, cried the Yelvian representative. If they succeed, they could ram their planet into our worlds. The Vora delegate sneered. They'll destroy themselves before that happens. But a voice from the far end of the chamber, a neutral observer, spoke softly. Perhaps not. Perhaps that's the point. On the ground, morale soared. The humans were no longer just surviving. They were rewriting warfare itself. In the ruins of Tokyo, a new prototype weapon rolled out of the underground foundries, the Titan Frame, a bipedal combat exosuit 10 meters tall, powered by captured Vora reactors. Its pilot was a young man named Elias Rourke, Jr., the son of the scientist who had died at Poseidon. He stood before his squadron, staring at the steel giant. My father built machines to explore the stars, he said. I'll use them to defend what's left of us. When the Titan frames marched into battle, even the Vora trembled. The first Titan deployment struck near the ruins of Cairo. A Vora ground column advanced through the desert, 3,000 troops, supported by air skimmers and crawler tanks. They expected resistance, but not what they found. The sand erupted. Titans rose from below, their armor etched with human symbols and graffiti. Rail cannons mounted on their arms thundered. Plasma rounds, once alien, now human-made, carved through Vora ranks. The Vora responded with orbital strikes. The Titans withstood them. When the smoke cleared, only humans remained standing, and the galaxy watched. Kreth Talvor raged. They're using our own technology against us. His adjutant bowed low. Admiral, perhaps... Perhaps? Kreth snapped. No! They must be annihilated. Deploy the shroud bombs! The shroud bombs were their ultimate weapon, a device that bent reality, erasing matter itself. But they never reached their targets. Because by then, humanity had something else waiting, the Hades platforms. From Earth's orbit, massive energy beams lanced upward, striking the shroud delivery ships before they could launch. The sky turned to fire as alien debris fell like meteors. Jo watched from command, her voice calm. That's for Nairobi. For the first time in recorded history, Earth's orbit was free of enemy ships. The humans had taken back the sky. In the aftermath, Hale addressed the survivors through every channel, his voice steady despite exhaustion. This war began as extinction. Now it ends as evolution. We are not fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting to make sure no one ever does this again. His words spread far beyond Earth. Other species heard him, and some began to rise. On the distant planet of Shorla, a small reptilian species under Vora domination rose up, inspired by human defiance. On the mining moons of Lareth, enslaved workers revolted, shouting in crude human dialects, "We bleed, but we fight." The spark of humanity spread across the stars. Back on Earth, as engineers worked to finalize the Prometheus drive, a strange transmission reached Hale's command. It was Vora language, distorted, fragmented. "This is Krethtalvor," the voice said. "You will pay," Hale replied simply. "We already have." Days later, the Vora launched their last assault, a fleet so vast it blotted out the stars. Hundreds of warships descended, pouring energy fire across the atmosphere. The ground quaked, oceans boiled, cities turned to glass. Hale stood in the command bunker, his hand hovering over a final switch. Joe whispered, "Sir, if we activate the drive, there's no going back." He nodded slowly. "Then it's time we stop looking back." He pressed the switch. The Prometheus drive ignited. Every mountain, every ocean, every crater lit up as energy coursed through the Earth's core. Space folded. Gravity screamed. The planet itself began to move. To the Vora fleet, it was incomprehensible. An entire world turning into a weapon. From orbit, it looked like Earth was burning anew. But it wasn't destruction. It was transcendence. Humanity had turned their home into the first mobile fortress planet in history. The Vora fired everything they had. It didn't matter. The Earth endured. When the drive stabilized, Hale's voice echoed across all frequencies. "You came to erase us. Now we're coming to erase the idea of you." And with that, Earth, glowing like a newborn sun, launched toward the Vora homeworld. The galaxy had seen wars before, empires clashing, worlds burning, but nothing like this. An entire planet, wrapped in shields and fire, was moving through the void like a vengeful god. Earth was on the march. From the bridge of the Imperium's maw, Krethtalvor watched in disbelief as human transmissions filled every channel. Music, laughter, speeches, even recordings of Earth's reign. The sounds of life itself. "Impossible," he hissed. "A planet cannot move," his adjutant replied, voice trembling. "And yet it does, Admiral." They watched as Earth's magnetic field distorted space. The once blue world now shimmered with veins of plasma, surrounded by orbiting stations like armor plates. A planetary fortress, a declaration. Humanity had not just survived. They had evolved. Inside the subterranean control network beneath what had been the Andes, Hale stood before a holographic map of the solar system. The Prometheus drive glowed red, stable but volatile. Earth's velocity increased by the hour. "How long before we reach Vora Prime?" he asked. Dr. Lin Wei responded from her console. 78 days if we survive the radiation storms ahead." "But, sir—" She hesitated. The drive wasn't meant to sustain this. "It's holding, barely," Hale nodded. "Then we make it count." Across the planet, humanity prepared. Cities that had once been tombs now served as war foundries. The ruined streets of Paris echoed with the hum of engines. The deserts of Nevada were launch sites for kinetic rail pods. Antarctica was the beating heart of the Prometheus core, where Lin Wei worked without rest, patching the drive's dying systems. Joe stood at the command deck, her voice steady. "We're no longer the defenders of Earth. We are Earth. The journey was brutal." Space twisted around them. The drive created temporary wormholes, each jump tearing at the crust. The oceans boiled and reformed. The atmosphere howled like a wounded beast. But humanity endured. Inside bunkers and shelters, people sang. Old songs, folk tunes, military hymns, lullabies from 100 languages. It was chaos and beauty entwined. The aliens watching from afar called it madness. But for humans, it was life refusing to yield. Meanwhile, in the Vora core systems, panic spread. Their homeworld, once a symbol of eternal dominance, was fortifying for the unthinkable, a planetary siege. Krethtalvor arrived at Vora Prime with a shattered fleet, his armor scorched, his pride hollow. The Council of Races convened in emergency session. "This cannot be allowed," said one elder. "They will destroy everything," Kreth snarled. "They're already destroying everything. You should have let me end them when I had the chance," another counselor hissed. "You had your chance." "You failed," Kreth's voice rose to a roar. "They made me fail. These humans, they corrupt logic itself." Back aboard Earth's command bunker, Hale addressed the global network. His voice was transmitted to every survivor, every ship, every station orbiting the moving planet. 70 years ago, we thought we were alone," he said. "Then we found the stars, and the stars tried to kill us. They taught us something important. Peace is not given, it's enforced." He paused, his expression heavy. "We lost billions, families, friends, everything we loved. But if the universe thinks it can erase humanity without consequence, then let the universe learn fear." The first contact between Earth and the Vora Defense Fleet occurred in the outer system of Gralnar. The humans arrived like a storm. The Hades platforms opened fire, unleashing beams powerful enough to split moons. The Vora responded with anti-gravity torpedoes and psychic dissonance fields, warfare that shattered minds. But humans had learned to fight through pain. Even as soldiers bled from their noses and ears, they kept firing. Even as command relays burned, they sent messages. Even as death itself closed in, they refused to stop. Anja and the Bleeding Sun Battalion were deployed on one of Earth's orbital platforms, now serving as boarding strike carriers. Their target, the Vora Dreadnought Fate of Stars. As their shuttles cut through space, Anja's voice echoed through the comms. "They called us insects. Time to remind them that swarms eat giants." They boarded through shattered hulls, fighting through corridors slick with alien blood. The Vora fought savagely, but humans fought like people who had nothing left to lose. Anja's rifle barked fire until it melted in her hands. Then she grabbed a fallen Vora blade. When the last alien fell, she stood over the Dreadnought's command node, panting, drenched in green blood. "We're inside," she radioed. "You can fire when ready." Moments later, the Dreadnought turned its own guns toward the Vora fleet and opened fire. Anja smiled grimly. "They bleed." Kreth Talvor watched from his flagship as his fleet fell apart. His sub-commanders panicked. His systems screamed warnings. He could feel the weight of 1,000 years of conquest crumbling, and still the humans advanced. "Pull back," shouted one officer. "They're turning their own ships against us." Kreth's claws dug into the console. "No retreat. If the Vora are to fall, we will fall in fire." On Earth, the Prometheus Corps began to overload. Dr. Lin Wei worked feverishly, rerouting power, stabilizing conduits with manual overrides. The temperature in the control room exceeded 200 degrees Celsius. Her team begged her to evacuate. She refused. "If I leave, the core collapses. Earth dies." "We're too close," she transmitted a message to Hale. "If the drive fails, it'll tear us apart before we reach their homeworld." Hale's reply came through the static. "Then hold, Lynn. Just hold." She smiled faintly. "I always do." Then she pulled the override lever and vanished in a flash of light. The core stabilized. Barely. Lin Wei was gone. Her sacrifice bought Earth 10 more jumps. 10 more days of vengeance. As Earth drew near the Vora system, the enemy mobilized their planetary shield network. Dozens of moons aligned in a defensive grid, each armed with energy cannons. The humans could see them through the clouds, a wall of fire between them and their target. Joe approached Hale. "Sir, even with our orbital guns, we can't break through that." Hale nodded slowly. "Then we'll do what humans always do when we can't go through something." He looked at the planet's map, then smiled coldly. "We'll go under it." The plan was madness. Human ships dove into the gravity well of Vora Prime, using the planet's own pull to slingshot beneath the shield network. The atmospheric friction nearly tore them apart, but they made it through, and so did Earth itself, shifting course at the last possible second. The Prometheus drive howled, its magnetic storms cracking the crust. Volcanoes erupted. Lightning struck oceans of fire. Then, Earth broke the Vora defense grid. The planetary shields collapsed under the shockwave. Humanity's world, scarred, battered, glowing with fury, descended into the Vora sky like a comet of judgment. On the surface of Vora Prime, billions looked up. They had believed themselves untouchable. Now the sky burned with the image of a blue and gold world descending from the heavens. Panic consumed their cities. Sirens wailed. Armies scrambled, and then came the transmission. General Hale's voice, calm and heavy as stone. "You wanted monsters. You made us. Now meet your creation." Earth opened fire. Every Hades platform, every Titan frame, every rail cannon fired in unison. Vora Prime's surface ignited. The planet's crust split under the barrage. Alien towers crumbled, oceans boiled, skies turned black. Kreth Talvor stood on his flagship, watching his homeworld die. He fell to his knees. "It cannot end like this." A voice came through his comms. "Human, familiar, Anya. This is for Berlin," she said, and detonated the captured Vora dreadnought directly into his command ship. The explosion lit up space like a second sun. In Earth's command bunker, silence followed. The screens flickered. One by one, the enemy signals went dark. Joe whispered, "It's over." But Hale didn't smile. He looked at the Earth itself, cracked, burning, bleeding energy into space. "No," he said quietly. "Not yet." The Prometheus drive was dying. The energy backlash from the assault had destabilized its containment fields. If they didn't act, Earth would collapse into a black hole. Hale knew what had to be done. He looked at Joe. "You'll take command now." She shook her head. "No, don't you dare," he smiled faintly. "Someone has to steer the ship." He turned toward the control room. "Tell them we fought to the end." Inside the core chamber, Hale placed his hands on the manual override. The screens flashed with warning sigils. Outside, the stars shimmered as gravitational collapse began. He spoke softly, to no one in particular. "To my wife, to my son, to everyone who's still listening, we didn't go quietly." He pulled the lever. The Prometheus drive exploded outward, releasing all its energy in one final surge. The blast consumed Earth and the remnants of the Vora fleet. Light brighter than creation flooded the void. From distant worlds, observers watched the supernova bloom across the sky. They called it the light of humanity. For days it shone brighter than any sun. Then it was gone, and the galaxy fell silent. But silence does not mean absence. Weeks later, scattered signals began to emerge, fragments of human transmissions, distorted but clear. "This is Commander Joe. Earth is gone, but humanity lives. We scattered before the blast. We carry the memory with us. The Vora are no more." She looked into the camera, her face illuminated by the faint glow of dying starlight. "If anyone can hear us, know this. They called us monsters." They were right. But we were monsters with hearts. The galaxy would never forget the light. For months, the supernova that had been Earth burned across the void like a scar in the fabric of time. The Vora Empire was ash, its fleets shattered, its world silent. But amid the ruin, whispers spread, rumors that humans still lived. At first, no one believed it. How could they? A species that detonated its own world could not have survived. But then the signals came. The ardent hope, a ragtag human battleship built from scavenged alien wreckage, drifted through the debris field of what had once been Vora Prime. Commander Joe sat in the command chair, wrapped in a patched uniform, eyes hollow from exhaustion. Her ship's crew, barely 1,000 survivors, worked in silence. Many were scarred, all were haunted. "Status report," she said softly. A technician replied, "Life support stable. Radiation shields holding. No sign of pursuit." Joe exhaled. "Good. Keep the transmitters active. Someone has to know what happened here." The technician hesitated. "Commander, do you think anyone will care?" Joe's gaze drifted to the stars. "They will. Eventually." Elsewhere, in the ruins of the galactic network, the surviving races struggled to comprehend what had happened. The destruction of the Vora homeworld sent shockwaves through every empire. Trade routes collapsed. Armies disbanded. Fear spread faster than light. To them, humanity had become a myth, a warning whispered by soldiers to their children. Do not awaken them. Do not anger Earth. The light of humanity became a symbol across the spiral arms, etched into temples and archives. Even the proudest species, the ones who had once mocked mankind, spoke the name with reverence and dread, but survivors remained on both sides. In a quiet sector near the edge of the Orion Rift, a single alien transport ship drifted without power. Its passengers were refugees, former Vora citizens, stripped of their empire, clinging to life. One of them, an elder named Sareth Talvor, sat in silence before the viewport. He had once been the brother of Admiral Kreth, the architect of Earth's genocide. Now he was just another wanderer in a broken galaxy. When the human signal reached his ship, the crew panicked. "It's them! The monsters!" But Sareth raised a hand. "No. Listen." The transmission was faint, damaged by cosmic radiation. "This is Commander Joe of the human vessel Ardent Hope. We are not conquerors. We are survivors. To any who can hear this, remember what you've done and what we became to stop you. If peace is possible, seek it. But if you seek to erase us again, know this. Even ashes remember." The message looped endlessly. Sareth bowed his head. "Even ashes remember," he whispered. For the first time in his long life, he wept. Not for the Vora, but for what they had forced humanity to become. Years passed. The galaxy rebuilt slowly. Empires fractured, and in their place rose coalitions, free worlds, and smaller nations bound not by power, but by fear of repeating the past. And through the cracks of history, humans returned, not as conquerors, not as monsters, but as wanderers, silent, watchful, hardened by the fire that had nearly erased them. Their ships were few, each one a relic of Earth's final war. They bore no flags, no emblems, only the symbol of a single blue circle, half shattered, half whole. They were called the Remnants. The Remnants moved quietly through the stars, rescuing refugees, rebuilding stations, sharing technology. Some feared them. Some welcomed them. But none dared to challenge them. Everywhere they went, they left behind small acts of mercy, a repaired generator, a revived hospital, a saved colony. The galaxy began to wonder, were the monsters gone? Or had humanity simply found a new way to fight? On a barren moon orbiting what was left of Vora Prime, Joe stood beside a simple memorial, a slab of metal engraved with names. Billions of names, the names of the dead. She touched the metal gently. Dr. Lin Wei, General Hale, Anya, everyone. Behind her, a young officer approached. "Ma'am, the council representatives from the Coalition of Free Worlds are ready." "They want to speak with you," Ju nodded. "I know. Are you sure we should trust them?" "They were allies of the Vora once," Joe smiled faintly. "So were we once, before we learned what they truly were." She turned toward the horizon, where the remnants of Earth's debris still shimmered faintly in orbit. "Let them come. Maybe it's time we stop being ghosts." The council chamber aboard the Ardent Hope was small, barely large enough for the dozen species gathered there. Sareth Talvor stood among them, representing what was left of his people. His voice trembled as he spoke. "We cannot undo what was done. My brother's crimes are beyond measure. But I offer you this." He placed a small crystal on the table. "The last uncorrupted Vora archive. Proof that not all of us wanted war." Joe studied him. "And what do you want in return?" Sareth met her gaze. "Forgiveness?" "No, that would be too much to ask. Only understanding." Silence filled the room. Joe finally nodded. "Understanding is earned. You're still breathing. That's a start." A ripple of uneasy laughter spread. For the first time in decades, the galaxy began to breathe again. Later, Joe recorded a new message for the Galactic Network. It would become one of the most repeated transmissions in history. "We are humanity. Once we were weak, once we believed in peace without preparation. That mistake nearly destroyed us. But we learned. We adapted. We endured. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Mercy is our choice." "Vengeance was yours," Do not make us choose again. Centuries later, historians would argue about what truly ended the Age of Empires. Some said it was the destruction of Vora Prime. Others claimed it was the birth of the coalition of free worlds. But those who studied the human broadcasts, the songs, the stories, the desperate transmissions, knew the truth. It wasn't the weapons that changed the galaxy. It was the will, the unbreakable, impossible will of a species that refused to die quietly. Somewhere, deep in the Perseus Arm, an alien exploration crew discovered a drifting object, small, unpowered, covered in frost. It was a fragment of metal, marked with faded human text. They brought it aboard, puzzled by its simplicity. Only later did they translate the engraving, "We were here. We fought for our dead. We stood for the living. Earth may be gone, but humanity endures. Remember us not as monsters, but as proof that mercy must be earned." The alien captain stared at it for a long time. Then he whispered, "Maybe that's what gods are supposed to be." In time, the legend of Earth became something larger than fear. Children across the galaxy looked up at the night sky and asked their parents where the light of humanity had shone. And the parents told them it was the place where monsters became men again. Centuries faded. The ashes cooled. But in the dark, when wars threatened to rise again, some still claimed to hear faint transmissions in the void. Old voices, distorted, carried by relics of the past. "This is Earth Command. If anyone is out there, you're not alone." And somewhere, beyond the reach of any known star, a fragment of Earth drifted, its soil still glowing faintly, its crust carrying the echo of human laughter. It was said that sometimes, when the light hit it just right, you could almost see a reflection in the dust, a handprint, pressed into stone, proof that once humanity had stood there and refused to fall.